comrade, and you say, I can't support national liberation movements because I see what happened with them. You form a new state, and what happens? You have a new oppression. And you say, so that means that you think that the oppression they have now in terms of colonialism is better, is any better. I mean, I doubt a lot of ex-colonial people will say, oh, back in the days of British rule, we were much better off. It's very hard to find an example like that. So I think there's a lot of, there's a view sometimes that because it mightn't necessarily lead to the results that we expect, then it's not worthwhile fighting for. And I really think that we should pay more attention to what actual people on the ground are saying. And at the same time, you have to wonder, well, a social revolution could lead to anywhere. I mean, it could lead to Russia back in the 30s, certainly. It could lead to Korea back in the, I mean, today actually, or it could lead to whatever. So there's no, I mean, that's not a real answer. The question is why we haven't, as anarchists, been able to influence events towards a more libertarian perspective. But that's a question for us. It's not a question for the people that support, and rightly so, the struggle against colonial forms that still exist in the 21st century, whether it's Tamil nationalism or it's Kurdish or it's indigenous nationalism in Latin America. I think that if people fight for them, it's because there's something legitimate there, and we need to be able to translate it in libertarian terms. And a lot of people equate the concept of nation with the concept of state, and I think that that's theoretically not sound. But again, I come back to the problem, I think, of anarchism lacking organic theoreticians. So that means that people invent their own categories of thought and invent their own funny meaning to concepts all the time without so a lot of times we end up discussing over concepts without relating them to a specific meaning. So I don't like nation, but I don't care what you say for nation because I just don't like nation. And I think that nation is something, but I don't know what you're referring with it. I think that's a big problem in anarchism because unlike other movements, it lacks a consistent kind of theoretical corpus. Okay. So I think that it's from that perspective, it's easier to fall into artificial or debates, or actually debates based on ignorance a lot of the time. Now, this equation between nation and state, I think it's wrong, and I think that a lot of national liberation movements, particularly now, but even at other times, have given real possibilities to anarchism. You look in the past, probably the most clear example was Korea, where you had a very big movement that was formed, the struggle against Japanese colonial rule, and it became a mass movement for a very short period of time, no doubt, the 20s basically, just in the 30s it was losing, it was running off steam, but it became a mass movement because it dared to address an issue. In Cuba, in the end of the 19th century, it dared to address the issue. Not that there was no polemic at all, there was no controversy around it, but they dared to grab the issue and say, as anarchists, we'll fight for this, but we're very clear that we put no faith in a state, and we're fighting for people to take direct control of their lives, and that's what we're fighting, and that's our message. And that puts you at odds with the nationalists, that puts you at odds with imperialism, but that's the role you should have. I mean, you have to fulfill your role in social struggle as an anarchist, because that's why you are a specific category of politics or thought, or however you want to say it. But today I think that, I mean, taking aside those examples, anarchism remained largely indifferent to national liberation struggles historically. And I think that today we have an interesting opportunity in a number of movements, mainly with the indigenous movements in Latin America. I think that it's very important to do. Everyone knows what happened with the Zapatistas, but what the Zapatistas are doing is not probably the most interesting experience in Latin America. I mean, it's probably the best known because it came at a time when nothing was happening anywhere really, in '94, you know. But there's a lot of interesting experience with the Mara Indians, with some Amazonian communities, with the Mapuche in the south of Chile and Argentina. So it's interesting to look at that. Then you have the Kurdish movement that's coming to very interesting conclusions, particularly in relation to democratic confederalism, the project of the Kurdish liberation movement, and I've been very close to that. And I do think that there is an experience that we need to investigate and we need to learn more and see how it feeds and informs our own project and how we have something to offer to them as well. I don't think that we are a project to be imposed on people. I think that anarchism, if you explain it properly, it's a desirable thing, and most people tend to accept it if you can put it forward in a rational and into a seductive way. I mean, obviously, if you come as a bleeding priest, you know, preaching others how they should do and denouncing authoritarians and denouncing Marxist-Leninists, you're not going to attract anyone. You're going to become repulsive. But if you can listen to others and see how you can contribute to their goals, and you accept that what they want ultimately is fair, because what you want is freedom, social justice, and so on and so forth. We might disagree on the means for them, but if you agree on those goals and you show that you're on the side of the people, you can be able to influence far more people than you may suspect. And that includes obviously national liberation movements. I think that we definitely have to put very clear that we might have disagreements, but we're definitely not with the colonialists. And that's the starting point. And then we can discuss the rest, but we're not with colonialism in any form.